Welcome, you who are passionate about captivating and thrilling stories. We have for you a touching tale like never before. Grab a cup of coffee, and we can begin. We now leave you with our favorite storyteller, the griot. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to stay updated on our upcoming stories. Alright then. Let's go.
The sun had begun its slow descent over the city, casting a golden haze across the skyline as the valet pulled up a sleek black Mercedes in front of the most exclusive restaurant in town. The kind of place where the silverware cost more than a month's rent in most neighborhoods. Leonard stepped out first, his tailored blazer hugging his sculpted frame, his wristwatch glinting like a badge of pride. He moved with the effortless confidence of a man born into privilege, a prince in a world that bowed to his name. Amara followed closely, her steps elegant but measured, her smile poised but practiced. She wore a modest, well-fitted dress, one she had borrowed from a friend. The gold earrings were fake, but she carried herself like royalty. She had learned long ago that survival sometimes meant wearing a mask, so well even you forgot what was beneath. He opened the car door for her with a gentleman's flair, and she slid into the plush leather seat, her heartbeat already rising, not from desire, but from dread. They cruised in silence for a moment, the car purring like a contented beast beneath them. Leonard glanced sideways, his eyes sharp beneath designer sunglasses. "Why do you always ask me to drop you at the junction?" he asked casually, but his tone was tight, coiled with something deeper. Amara fiddled with the hem of her dress. Her voice was soft. "It's just easier that way." Leonard chuckled, but it lacked warmth. "Easier? Amara, we've been together for 5 years. I've taken you to Paris, Dubai, Zanzibar. You've met my family, been to my father's mansion. I've never once been to your house. Don't you think it's time I saw where you come from?" Her throat tightened. She smiled, forced and weak. "It's really not necessary." "I insist," he said, already turning the wheel, shifting direction without asking again. The city began to blur around them, the scenery subtly changing, from gleaming storefronts and trimmed hedges to cracked pavements and rusted gates. The roads narrowed. The air thickened with the scent of burning firewood and unfiltered living. Leonard's nose wrinkled. "Are we close?" he asked. Amara only nodded. Her hands trembled in her lap. She stared out the window, her heart thudding against her ribs like a trapped bird. They turned down one final street, dusty, uneven, crowded. Children ran barefoot across the road, and clotheslines sagged between houses that leaned with tired bones. "Here," she whispered. The Mercedes rolled to a stop in front of a small compound. The walls were peeling. The roof sagged slightly in the middle. A plastic bucket sat under a slow drip from a rusted pipe. A small vegetable garden, her mother's pride, bloomed defiantly in one corner. Leonard stared. The silence inside the car was suffocating. Before either of them could speak, the front door creaked open and out stepped Amara's mother. She was dressed in a faded wrapper and blouse, her hands dusted with flour, a warm smile blooming on her weathered face. "Amara, you're home, and you brought a visitor." Amara stepped out of the car slowly, ashamed of her shaking legs. "Mama, this is Leonard, my fiancé." Her mother's smile widened. "Ah, the young man who makes my daughter shine like the morning sun. Welcome, my son." Leonard hesitated, then stepped out of the car. He extended his hand reluctantly. She took it with both of hers. "Please come in. I'll bring you something small to eat," she said, already turning to disappear inside. Leonard looked at Amara, his expression unreadable. She nodded, barely. He ducked into the house. The living room was small, suffocatingly warm. Mismatched furniture hugged the walls. A battered fan turned slowly, groaning under the heat. He lowered himself onto the worn-out sofa, his eyes darting from corner to corner, every detail screaming discomfort. Moments later, Amara's mother returned with a steaming bowl of cornmeal and vegetable soup. "This is what we have today, my son," she said with pride. "Please eat." Leonard stared at the chipped wooden bowl, the mismatched spoon, the plastic cup of water. He swallowed hard. "Thank you, Ma, but I already ate," he said, forcing a smile. "Nonsense," she laughed. "You must eat more." But Leonard was already standing. I have to go." He walked out without looking back. Amara followed, her voice trembling. "Leo, wait. He turned on her, eyes blazing. "Why didn't you ever tell me your family is this poor?" She froze. "I've been with you for 5 years. 5! And I never knew you came from this kind of place." "What does it matter?" she whispered. "I love you." He laughed, a sound sharp as a knife. "Love? Love doesn't build a future. My parents will never accept this. I can't live like this." A pause. "You're ashamed of me," she said. He didn't deny it. "I can't do this, Amara. I can't carry this burden." And just like that, he walked away. Dust swirled in the air as his Mercedes disappeared into the distance, leaving behind silence, shame, and a girl whose heart had just been shattered into 1,000 silent pieces. The house was warm, not the kind of warmth that came from luxury heating or scented candles, but from life, from years of cooking with firewood and laughter echoing through cracked walls. Leonard sat stiffly on the couch, his polished shoes barely touching the worn rug beneath him. The small room hugged him tightly, too tightly, with its faded curtains and plastic flowers in a dusty vase. It smelled of herbs and earth, of family and struggle, scents that had never touched the inside of his father's marble mansion. Amara's mother hummed softly in the tiny kitchen, unaware of the storm brewing in her guest's chest. The woman moved with grace, with the confidence of someone who had long learned to survive on little and still find joy. She returned moments later, balancing a bowl with both hands, cornmeal and vegetable soup gently steaming. "This is what we have today, my son," she said with pride, setting it on the table before Leonard. "Please eat." Leonard's eyes dropped to the wooden bowl, its rim slightly chipped. A mismatched spoon lay beside it. The vegetables floated in a thin broth, humble and honest. It was not what he was used to. There was no garnish, no imported wine, no linen napkin folded like a swan. His throat tightened. "Thank you, Ma," he said, forcing a smile, "but I already ate." She laughed, kind and maternal. "A young man like you? You must eat more." He looked to Amara, her eyes pleading, hands clenched in her lap. She gave him a small nod, just a sliver of hope that he might meet her halfway, but the tightness in his chest refused to ease. Leonard stood abruptly. The chair scraped the floor with an ugly screech. "I have to go," he said. Amara's mother blinked. "But you just got here." "I said, I have to go." Without another glance, he turned and walked toward the door, the shadows of disappointment following him like ghosts. Outside, the heat had softened into dusk, and the street shimmered under a blanket of orange light. Amara rushed after him, her sandals slapping against the dusty ground. "Leo, wait," she called, her voice cracking. He turned sharply, his face cold, unreadable. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he spat. "Tell you what?" "That your family is this poor." Her lips parted, but no sound came. This is unbelievable," he said, waving a hand back toward the house. 5 years, Amara. 5 years. I thought you lived in at least a decent neighborhood." Her eyes welled with tears, but she stood her ground. "Does it matter? I love you, Leonard." "Isn't that enough?" He laughed bitterly. Love doesn't build a future. Love doesn't pay bills or open doors. Do you honestly think my parents will accept this? That I can live like this? "You're ashamed of me," she whispered, her voice breaking. He didn't answer. The silence was louder than any insult. "I should have known," she said. "You were always too proud, too careful. You loved the way I made you feel, but not who I was." Leonard looked at her for a long moment, something flickering behind his eyes. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was just disgust wrapped in pity. "I can't do this, Amara," he said quietly. "I can't marry into a family that will only be a burden." And with that, he turned, slid into his car and drove off, dust curling in his wake like a cruel punctuation mark at the end of their story. Amara stood frozen in the dirt road, her shoulders trembling. A dog barked in the distance. Somewhere nearby, a child laughed, unaware that someone's world had just crumbled. Later that night, as she lay curled on her thin mattress, her phone buzzed. "I'm sorry, Amara, but we can't be together. Your family is too poor, and I can't carry that burden. I hope you understand." Her fingers trembled as she read the message. Once, twice, again. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks, soaking the pillow beneath her. She had given him her heart. He had measured its worth in money, and she had come up short. The Desmond estate was a fortress of glass, gold and coldness. Its marble floors gleamed like still water, the air perfumed with imported flowers and expensive silence. Here everything sparkled, except warmth. Leonard lounged in the sunken living room, swirling a glass of aged whiskey, the kind that came with a price tag most men wouldn't earn in a year. He scrolled lazily through his phone, half listening to the soft hum of classical music playing from the hidden ceiling speakers. He had just returned from an exclusive beach resort with friends, another indulgent escape funded by a life he never had to earn. His father, Mr. Desmond, sat across the room like a statue carved from stone, flipping through financial reports with surgical precision. His tailored suit barely creased, and not once did he look up at his son. "You need to start thinking about your future," he said finally, his voice flat. Leonard smirked without looking up. "Isn't that what family wealth is for? So I don't have to?" Desmond's eyes lifted slowly, sharp, measuring. "Wealth is not inherited, Leonard, it is maintained, and you've done nothing to maintain it." Leonard rolled his eyes, already bored of the lecture. They had this conversation often. He had no desire to carry the weight of the Desmond empire. Why would he? Everything he ever wanted had always been handed to him. But that night, everything shifted. Mr. Desmond came home early, unusual. He was meticulous, a man of routine. But as he stepped into the quiet hallway, something felt wrong. The sound of muffled laughter floated down the grand staircase, a woman's voice, his wife's voice. His jaw tightened. He moved with the quiet of a predator, his leather shoes whispering across polished marble. The laughter stopped. Then came hurried rustling, fabric, footsteps, panic. He threw open the bedroom door, and the world shattered. Evelyn stood near the bed, her blouse half-buttoned, her eyes wide with guilt. Beside her, a shirtless man froze, his hands clutching a wrinkled shirt, his face pale with fear. Desmond's face didn't change, but his fists clenched. "This," he said, voice dangerously low, "is what you do while I build empires." "Desmond, please, I can explain." "Explain what?" The other man bolted, brushing past him like a coward through a battlefield. Desmond didn't flinch. His rage was not for the intruder. His eyes pinned Evelyn in place like a blade. "How long?" he asked. Evelyn stammered, the tears already spilling. It meant nothing." He stepped closer. "Tell me something." A beat, a breath, a storm. "Is Leonard even my son?" Silence. Evelyn's face changed. Her breath hitched, her lips parted, but no words came. "I'll find out myself." And he did. 3 days later, the truth arrived in a thin envelope stamped with cold finality. Leonard stood in his father's study, confused by the summons. Evelyn was already there, sitting like a ghost in the corner. Her face was hollow. Desmond handed Leonard the paper. "Read it." Leonard unfolded the results. His fingers shook slightly as his eyes scanned the lines. "Probability of paternity, 0%. No, this can't be right," he whispered. "There must be a mistake." "Mom," he turned, his voice pleading, drowning. But Evelyn could only cry. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought there was a chance." "There was no chance," Desmond snapped. "For 27 years I raised you, I gave you my name, my wealth, and you—" He turned to Evelyn, voice shaking. "You let me live a lie." He turned to Leonard, eyes as cold as steel. "You are not my son." "Dad, don't call me that." Leonard's knees weakened. The room tilted, like the ground had betrayed gravity. His entire identity, his legacy, his name, was being stripped like old wallpaper. "You are nothing to me." Desmond picked up the phone. "Security, escort these two out of my house." Leonard's breath caught. "You're throwing us out?" Desmond didn't even blink. "I will not house a bastard and a deceitful woman under my roof." 10 minutes later, the gates closed behind them. The mansion, the only world Leonard had ever known, vanished behind a blur of tears and shame. They spent the night in a cheap motel that reeked of mildew and desperation. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, wringing her hands. Leonard stared at the ceiling, numb. The sheets were thin, the mattress hard, but that wasn't what kept him awake. It was the silence. For the first time in his life, Leonard heard the sound of nothing. No servants, no luxury, no future. Just the raw echo of his own breath. "I don't know what to do," Evelyn whispered. Neither did he, because for the first time, Leonard had nothing. No name, no fortune, no identity, only the bitter aftertaste of betrayal and the unbearable weight of truth. The motel was a box of peeling paint and sour air. The light bulb flickered weakly, as if too tired to hold on. Leonard sat on the edge of the stained mattress, his expensive watch still clinging to his wrist like a relic of a past life that no longer belonged to him. It had been days since the truth burned his world down. He hadn't spoken much. Neither had Evelyn. She just stared out the small window, watching the street below like it might offer an answer. Gone were the elegant gowns, the perfume, the pearls. She now wore plain clothes, her hair pulled back into a tired bun. The woman who once hosted society luncheons now folded napkins in silence. A week later, they found a small apartment, if it could even be called that. One room, a leaking ceiling, and a fan that coughed more than it spun. The walls were yellowed with age and regret. There were no curtains, just old newspapers taped to the windows to keep out the sun. It was a space built not for comfort, but for survival. Leonard opened the fridge, empty. Just a bottle of water and a small packet of dry bread. He reached for it, tore off a piece, and chewed slowly, the flavour of humiliation bitter on his tongue. He spent his days pounding the streets, resume in hand, pride left behind. At first, he dressed sharply, still clinging to the idea that appearance mattered. But suit after suit began to wear thin, and doors began to slam faster than they opened. "You're overqualified," they said. "We don't need someone with your background. You don't seem used to this kind of work." The irony, the cruel irony. The same charm that once made him the golden boy now made him look out of place. Too polished for a construction job, too inexperienced for management, too proud for retail. His phone, once a portal to endless connections, had fallen silent. No one returned his calls. The group chats grew cold. The luxury crowd had no room for poverty. One afternoon, he sat on the curb outside a job centre, tie loosened, sweat soaking his shirt. Children ran barefoot nearby, chasing a punctured ball with a kind of joy he couldn't remember ever having. A woman sold roasted plantains under a faded umbrella. Smoke curled into the sky like silent prayers. Leonard watched them all, numb. His stomach growled. He closed his eyes. Evelyn, meanwhile, had stopped waiting for rescue. She found work as a cleaner in a small company's offices, mopping floors she once walked in stilettos, scrubbing bathrooms with the same hands that had once signed charity gala checks. She never complained. She simply worked. Every morning she left with a scarf tied around her head, a lunch pack wrapped in nylon, and a tired kiss on Leonard's forehead. She never said it, but the message was always the same. We have to survive. And Leonard began to see her, not as the broken woman who kept a secret, but as a mother who refused to fold. One night, the power went out. The fan died. The room melted in the heat. Leonard lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling, sweat trickling down his temples. He whispered to himself, voice cracking. I used to judge this. He remembered driving past neighborhoods like this one, windows up, nose turned, dismissing it all as the other side. But now, this was his side, and it was real. The dirt under his nails, the ache in his bones, the rejection in every job interview, the meals of Gary and groundnuts, the silence of former friends. This was the descent, but it was also the truth. For the first time in his life, Leonard saw the world without tinted windows, and it looked nothing like the one he thought he ruled. The nights were long now, not because of loneliness, though that still came in waves, but because every hour was accounted for. Amara had no room for tears anymore. Grief had been evicted from her soul and replaced with something fiercer, something fire-forged, resolve. By day, she worked at a tiny convenience store, ringing up bags of rice and canned tomatoes for customers who barely looked at her. By night, she washed dishes in the back of a roadside restaurant, her hands raw from soap and water, her back aching from hours hunched over greasy plates. The pay was barely enough to keep the lights on. But she didn't complain. She had learned that dignity isn't in the job you do, it's in how you do it. One night, during a break behind the kitchen, she sat with her co-worker, Mama Kem, a wide-hipped, big-hearted woman with a loud laugh and eyes that had seen life's worst and still found ways to sparkle. You work too hard, my dear, Mama Kem said, wiping sweat from her brow. You'll burn out before you bloom. Amara smiled faintly, too tired for words. Mama Kem dug into her purse and pulled out a crumpled flyer. Here, my cousin's running a seminar for young people. Business training. Free. Amara took it, eyes scanning the paper. Youth Enterprise Workshop. Build with what you have. She didn't sleep that night. Her mind burned with ideas, questions, hunger, not the kind that food could fix, but the kind that kept the soul from going numb. The seminar was held in a stuffy hall with plastic chairs and a shaky sound system. Young men and women filled the space, eyes wide with equal parts hope and fear. A man in a crisp shirt and dusty shoes stood at the front, speaking with the fire of someone who had been there. "You don't need millions to start," he said, his voice rising. "You need purpose. You need vision. You need to start." Amara sat in the back row, heart pounding. She listened to every word like it was scripture. At the end, they asked for volunteers to pitch ideas. She hesitated, but then she stood. "I want to start a delivery business," she said, voice steady. "Small businesses in my area, bakers, tailors, shops, they lose customers because people can't reach them. I want to be the bridge." The room went quiet. Then the speaker nodded slowly. "What's stopping you?" Amara took a breath. "I have no capital, no equipment, just this idea and my willingness to work." He smiled. "That's more than most people have." That night, the words echoed in her chest like a battle cry. Start with what you have. The next morning, Amara went to the local bakery, Mama Noise, a little shop that smelled like sugar, firewood, and nostalgia. The woman behind the counter looked up, wiping her flour-covered hands on her apron. "Amara?" she asked. "Is everything okay?" Amara nodded, then launched into her pitch. "What if I helped you deliver bread? People would buy more if they didn't have to walk here every morning. I'll go house to house, business to business. All I need is a chance." Mama Ngoy was skeptical, but after a long pause, she said the words Amara had been waiting to hear. "I'll give you a chance, but no mistakes." That was how it began. No fancy logos, no office. Just Amara, a borrowed bicycle, and a bag of warm bread tied with string. She delivered with care, smiling, greeting, thanking, listening. She made sure no one was ever disappointed. Word spread. Soon a local tailor called. Then a mini-mart. Then a school. She reinvested every kobo, bought a second bike, hired a boy from her street, then another. She learned as she went, logistics, scheduling, customer care. She studied online with borrowed data. She worked while others slept, and every time someone said, "You can't," she whispered back, "Watch me." The dust on her feet became her badge of honor. Amara, the girl once left behind in shame, was becoming a woman the world would have to reckon with. This was the spark. The fire was coming. The city streets became her runway. Every morning, as the sun yawned awake and painted the sky with streaks of gold, Amara was already out. Her helmet strapped, her satchel packed, her phone buzzing with orders. What began with a single basket of bread had now multiplied. Groceries, parcels, medicine, documents. She became the artery between businesses and customers, the rhythm behind the city's hustle. She was no longer just delivering goods. She was delivering reliability, trust, change. The name of her small business, SwiftLink, began to travel through the mouths of merchants like gospel. First came referrals, then came requests, then came pressure. Her little handwritten ledger was no longer enough. Orders increased, mistakes crept in. One afternoon she sat beneath a mango tree, her head in her hands, overwhelmed by the chaos of success. But she didn't crumble, she evolved. Amara bought a cheap smartphone with her saved profits and taught herself how to use delivery apps and spreadsheets. She enrolled in free online courses at night, listening to business lectures while scrubbing her floor. She learned about operations, logistics software, and team management. One video, one blog, one late night at a time. She was building something, and this time it was hers. Every week she trained new riders, young men and women who were once unemployed, hungry, and overlooked. She didn't just give them jobs, she gave them purpose. She taught them to speak with confidence, to handle clients with respect, to ride like professionals. They wore simple uniforms, white polos with the company logo embroidered by hand, but they stood tall in them. And the city began to notice. One business turned into 5 into 20. Soon, she could afford motorbikes. Then a tiny office space with cracked windows and too few chairs. It didn't matter. To her, it was a castle. She hung a quote behind her desk that read, "Start small, dream loud." But the road was not smooth. Rejections came like rain in Harmattan season. Large corporations scoffed at her youth, her gender, her small-time business. They questioned her capacity, her scale, her name. Some didn't even bother replying to her emails. But Amara did what she had always done. She kept showing up, she kept knocking, she kept building. Her riders were disciplined, her deliveries were on time, her customers were loyal, and slowly, one deal at a time, the bigger clients came. One day, a multinational e-commerce company called her. The manager, a woman, said, "We've heard about you. You've built something special." That contract changed everything. Within a year, she moved to a proper office. Within 2, she had a fleet. Within 3, she had her own logistics hub. Her company was now partnering with over 50 businesses, servicing thousands of deliveries a week. By the time she turned 30, she was listed in the city's top entrepreneurs under 30. Newspapers called her the Queen of the Streets. Her face graced magazine covers, not in silk gowns at galas, but in a smart blazer, arms folded, eyes fierce. A builder, a boss, a beacon. But through it all, she never forgot where she came from. She started a mentorship program for young women, offering them skills, jobs, and courage. She hired mothers who needed flexible hours. She sponsored vocational training for unemployed youth. Her office still had a photo on the wall, not of celebrities or awards, but of her first bike. Rusted, bent, beautiful. One quiet evening, long after her staff had gone home, Amara stood by her office window. The city lights blinked below like a million tiny stars, bowing in respect. She exhaled deeply. No music, no applause, no one watching. But she smiled because this quiet, steady triumph was louder than any ovation. She had emerged, and the world would never forget her name again. The floors gleamed beneath the hum of air conditioning, the glass doors whispered open and closed like secrets, and the walls of elite logistics pulsed with order and ambition. The logo, a golden wing wrapping a parcel, glowed behind the reception desk, a symbol of a woman who had once delivered bread with a borrowed bicycle. Amara now walked these halls in heels that echoed like a war drum. Her presence was a statement, elegant, grounded, and fierce. Her black suit fit like armor, her voice calm like a storm waiting to be summoned. She didn't shout to be heard. People listened when she entered a room. And yet she still greeted every staff member with a smile, still brought lunch for the janitor on Fridays, still paused to fix a crooked frame on the wall. Power hadn't hardened her. It had simply sharpened her focus. In the background of this empire, Evelyn swept the floors. She wore a simple blue uniform, her once manicured fingers now calloused with work. She never looked anyone in the eye for too long. She was efficient, respectful, and invisible, just the way she preferred. But what she didn't know was this. She was cleaning the floors of the woman her son had once discarded like worn cloth. One afternoon, as Amara reviewed logistics reports in her glass-walled office, her secretary knocked gently. "Madam, one of the cleaning staff, Evelyn. She says she needs to speak with you. She says it's urgent." Amara raised a brow, intrigued. "Send her in." Evelyn stepped inside, head bowed, hands nervously twisting the hem of her shirt. "Madam, Amara," she said softly. I didn't know this was your company." Amara didn't flinch. She had seen this coming. Evelyn looked up, eyes watery. "My son, Leonard, he's struggling. We both are. He hasn't found work. He's lost. He needs help." A pause, a breath. "Please," Evelyn whispered. "I know what he did to you. I can't undo it, but I also know the kind of heart you have. Please, just give him a chance." Amara studied the woman, the same woman who once looked down her nose at her. But now there were no pearls, no perfume, just humility and the kind of motherly ache that only true desperation could bring. She gave a slow nod. "Tell him to submit his application tomorrow." Evelyn gasped, hands pressed together. "Thank you. God bless you. Thank you." When she left, Amara stood by her window and looked out at the city she had claimed. Her past had walked in again, but this time she didn't flinch. The next day, Leonard arrived. His shoes were worn, his shirt clean but faded, and the envelope in his hand slightly bent. He looked up at the shining building, Elite Logistics, like a man staring at a world that used to be his. He had walked here. No chauffeur, no car, just sweat and regret in his pocket. At the reception, he cleared his throat. "My mother, she works here. She said, there's a vacancy." The receptionist nodded, took the envelope and tapped something on her computer. "Please wait. The CEO would like to see you." Leonard blinked. "The CEO? Yes. Follow me." Each step down the long hallway felt heavier than the last. His heart thudded in his chest like a verdict waiting to be read. The receptionist opened a wooden door. "Go in." Leonard stepped inside and froze. Behind a glass desk sat Amara. Her presence wrapped the room in silence. She didn't rise. She didn't speak. She simply looked at him, calm, composed, untouchable. Leonard's mouth went dry. "Amara," he croaked. She leaned back, folding her arms, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "I hear you're looking for a job." He swallowed hard. I didn't know this was your company. Would it have made a difference? A long silence. No, he said, barely above a whisper. I mean, I don't know. Her eyes never left his. Your mother has been one of my most reliable employees. She never once complained. She never once acted entitled. I respect that. Leonard's shame was thick and suffocating. He stared at the floor. Tell me, Amara said, her voice level and sharp, why should I hire you? His lips parted. Nothing came out. Then slowly he forced the words. I need a chance. I've made mistakes. I hurt you. But I'm not the same man. She raised a brow. And what can you offer my company? I've worked with clients, managed projects, handled operations. I know how to lead a team. I've lost everything, but I haven't lost my ability to learn or to work. She let the silence stretch. Then she spoke. I don't hire based on pity, Leonard. I hire based on merit. You'll get a 3-month probation. No favors, no shortcuts. You'll start from the bottom, just like everyone else. Relief rushed over him like a tide. Thank you. You won't regret this. She leaned forward slightly, her voice cool. Oh, I already have regrets, Leonard. One of them was ever believing you saw me beyond my background. He flinched. But we'll see, she said. Let's find out who you really are, without the gold and the name. She gestured toward the door. You start Monday. Leonard left the room slowly, the weight of her grace heavier than any insult. The roles had reversed, and the wheel had turned. The name tag on Leonard's chest read Operations Assistant. No titles. No junior executive. No corner office or leather chair. Just a simple white badge with black ink, his new identity. He shared a desk in the open plan workspace, sandwiched between the hum of printers and the chatter of dispatch coordinators. His computer was slow, the AC rarely reached his corner, and no one offered him coffee. But for once, no one looked at his past. They only cared if he could pull his weight. He reported to a woman 10 years younger than him who barked orders with the precision of a drill sergeant and didn't flinch once at his surname. Here, surnames didn't matter. Performance did. Leonard was no longer Mr. Desmond's son. He was just Leonard. And oddly, that truth was both crushing and freeing. His first tasks were menial: updating delivery logs, confirming package pickups, managing traffic routes. He fetched documents, scheduled rider shifts, and corrected errors in address entries. It was tiring, repetitive work. But for the first time, he earned the sweat on his shirt. At lunch, he sat quietly in the staff break room, eating rice and stew from a Tupperware container his mother had packed. Around him, colleagues laughed over jokes, shared weekend stories, and they argued about football. No one knew who he had once been, or if they did, no one cared. But what Leonard did notice, what he couldn't not notice, was her, Amara. She floated through the corridors like the wind, graceful, composed, with a sharpness that made even board members sit up straighter. She wore her power like perfume, subtle but undeniable. When she entered a room, listened. When she spoke, plans changed. Leonard watched her from afar, not out of bitterness, but awe. She was everything he had once doubted she could become. One afternoon, the company faced a shipment crisis. 2 major deliveries delayed due to clearance issues at the port. Tension buzzed through the operations floor like a broken wire. Managers scrambled. Phones rang non-stop. Then Amara arrived. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't panic. She asked questions. She listened. She gave orders calmly. Leonard found himself stepping forward, offering a solution based on negotiation strategies he had once learned during his father's meetings. Amara paused, looked at him, and gave a brief nod. Draft the proposal. Have it on my desk before noon. That was it. No smile, no praise, just expectation. She believed in effort, not sentiment. That evening, Leonard stayed late to finish the draft. As he left the building, tired but oddly fulfilled, he spotted Amara outside by the parking lot. She wasn't alone. A tall and sharply dressed man stood beside her, holding the car door open. He laughed at something she said, and she laughed back, soft, genuine. It wasn't the stiff, cautious laughter she once gave him. It was real. They drove off together, headlights slicing the night. Leonard stood frozen, the chill of the moment sharper than the wind. He had never imagined her moving on. Not really. In the back of his mind, Amara had always remained his, the woman who waited, who hurt, who might forgive. But this Amara, she had outgrown him. He returned to his apartment that night with silence in his chest. His mother asked about his day, but he just nodded. barely tasting the food she placed before him. He lay on the thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, and finally understood something cruel and true. He had become ordinary. Not because he lacked value, but because she no longer needed him to see hers. Amara no longer looked at him like he was her world. And it hurt, but beneath the ache was something else. Something like humility. He wasn't a king fallen from his throne. He was a man learning how to stand without one. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Leonard stepped in, his breath shallow, palms sweating. It was late evening, the office half empty, and for once fate had offered him a moment alone with her. Amara entered just as the doors began to close, a folder tucked under her arm, her silhouette graceful under the soft ceiling light. She pressed the button to the rooftop and barely acknowledged him. The silence wrapped around them, thick and tense. He stared straight ahead at the polished steel doors, but his heart was thudding like war drums. He couldn't hold it anymore. "I saw you," he said softly, "with that man." Amara didn't move. Her gaze remained on the rising floor count. "And?" Leonard hesitated. "Who is he?" She turned her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "A business partner. Why do you care?" "Because," he swallowed, "because I made a mistake." She looked at him then, really looked, and the weight of her gaze nearly knocked the breath from his lungs. "I was wrong, Amara," he whispered. "I thought money mattered more than love. I thought I needed someone who fit into the life I had, not someone who made me question it. But I see you now, the woman you've become. You're powerful, smart, brave." She tilted her head, almost curious. "And? I miss you," he confessed. "I miss who we were." A beat of silence passed, then another. And then Amara did something he wasn't prepared for. She laughed, not out of cruelty, but sadness. "Truth. You miss who we were?" she repeated, voice low. "Leonard, do you even remember who I was back then?" He opened his mouth but couldn't find the right words. She stepped closer, her voice suddenly clear, strong, steady. "I was a girl who loved you fiercely, who hid her shame, her struggle, her home, just to make you comfortable. I bent myself to fit into your world, while you never once tried to step into mine." Her words cut like knives, but they were clean, surgical, honest. "I gave you my heart," she continued, "and you measured it against your bank balance." Leonard looked down, the shame rising again like smoke from old fire. "But here's what hurts the most," she said, softer now. "It's not that you left, it's why you left. You made me believe I wasn't enough, that my worth could be calculated by the size of my house or the kind of soup my mother served." She took a deep breath. "I was valuable even when I had nothing, Leonard." Her voice trembled, not from weakness but from the power of truth. "And you couldn't see that." The elevator reached the rooftop. The doors opened. Amara stepped out, pausing for just a moment. "You see me now," she said, glancing over her shoulder, "but it's too late." And then she was gone. The wind greeted her like an old friend as she walked onto the rooftop, her hair dancing against the sky, her figure a silhouette of strength under the city's fading sun. Leonard remained inside the elevator, still breathless. She hadn't yelled, she hadn't cursed. She had simply told the truth, and left him standing in the ruins of everything he could have had, if only he had seen her then the way he saw her now. This heartbreak, this time, was his alone to carry. The light in Leonard's cubicle flickered faintly above his head. It was evening now, the rest of the office humming with quiet keyboards and ticking clocks. The sun had begun to dip behind the city skyline, casting long golden rays across the walls of elite logistics. The world outside was still rushing, still dreaming, but inside this little pocket of space, Leonard sat still. In front of him, an email. Subject, confirmation of employment, permanent staff. He stared at it for a long time. He hadn't cried, he didn't smile either, but somewhere deep within him something shifted. Not like a door flinging open, more like a slow creak, a quiet acceptance. This was his life now. Not the heir of a business empire, not the spoiled son of wealth. Not the boy in designer shoes who judged poverty from a tinted window. Just Leonard, a man with a job. A man who earned his way back to dignity, one file, one delivery route, one late night at a time. He leaned back in his chair, letting the breath escape his lungs like dust from a long-closed room. The desk in front of him was plain. No marble, no mahogany, just laminated wood with a chipped corner and a sticky note that read, "Meeting at 9 a.m. But it was his. He looked around at the other workers, people who had become friends, who had shared lunch with him, joked with him, respected him, not for who he had been, but for how he showed up. There was no applause, no parade, just peace. And yet there was an ache, a quiet, gnawing ache that never really left. Because no matter how much he rebuilt, there was one thing he could never recover: her. From the hallway came the sound of laughter, polished, light, and confident. Amara. She walked past the cubicles like a breeze made of purpose, surrounded by board members and executives in tailored suits. Her heels clicked with rhythm, her smile warm yet focused. Her presence carried the weight of 10 victories and the grace of a woman who no longer needed validation. She passed by his desk without a glance, not out of malice, but because she had simply moved on. She had become the vision she always held inside herself. Leonard didn't call her name. He didn't stand. He just watched, hands folded on his lap. In that moment, he saw not just the woman he lost, but the life that could have been. A life where he saw her worth from the beginning, where they built together, rose together. A life of humble beginnings, but shared dreams. A life he had once thought beneath him, now far beyond his reach. But he didn't weep. He simply nodded to himself, whispered thank you, not to her, but to the pain, the fall, the long journey through darkness that led him to something raw and real. He had been reborn, not as a king, not as her lover, but as a man. A man who now understood that some losses are permanent, some lessons are paid for with everything, and some women, they walk away with their head held high, because they never needed saving, they only needed to be seen. And now, too late, he saw her, and that would be his burden to carry forever.